Okay, so this is Jay. I'm back. It's time to get into the practice routine of the day. First, I want to mention to you, at some point I will probably do a video on stance. It's really important. It can make or break your game. I'll show it to you briefly here, but I'm not going to go in depth with it. What I do suggest is every pool player should have this book in their possession, in their library. It's the 99 Critical Shots in Pool by Ray Martin and Ross Reeves. I'm sorry, Rosser Reeves. Ray Martin is a 3-time World Straight Pool champion, member of the Billiards Hall of Fame, all-around great guy. He lives down in the Clearwater Seminole area in Florida. I haven't talked to him in a while. I probably ought to give him a call. But this book is indispensable. It forms the basis of 99% of what you need to know in the game. The only thing I'll say about the stance in here that's changed over the years since Ray wrote this book is actually kind of old. This is the 30th anniversary edition. I used to have the original, but I wore it out. In here, when he shows stance, he shows a stance that's too low, and that's actually considered the norm today. So let me, real quick, I'm going to show you the stance. I'm not going to go in detail about it. It's something that you really need somebody in person to show you if you don't know. A lot of it's natural. If it feels unnatural, it is. Okay, here's how it works. So I'm right-handed. If you're left-handed, just reverse all of this. I'm right-handed, so my left foot is going to point at the shot I'm shooting. My right foot's going to be a little bit back, and it's going to form a comfortable base there at about a 45-degree angle. My bridge hand is solid on the table. I've had hand surgery recently, so I can't show you the way I normally would. But basically, you lay your palm flat, you rotate up, and either place your thumb up for an open bridge, or for a closed bridge, you place the tip of your finger on that first knuckle, on the first knuckle of your finger, to create a nice closed bridge. And that's what the closed bridge looks like. Some players with bigger hands are more relaxed and their bridge looks more elongated than mine does. I've got small hands, and so it looks a little different. You can also do the classic round bridge, which is what I do usually because that's how I learned. Very rarely will you see me do the elongated bridge like that. I consider it a matter of preference. Most of the pros now use the longer bridge. It does give you a little more control with the tip of the shaft of the cue, but again, I have small fingers. It doesn't work very well for me, so I use the rounded one to give myself a little bit freer flow. Okay, so pointed at the shot, you bend at the waist. Don't bend at the knees. Don't do the cowboy. Just bend at the waist. Lean down. Back of your arm should be parallel to the ground. Forearm should be just hanging loosely. You don't have to grab the bottom of the cue, you just let it rest. Let me turn to the other side so you can see this. You just basically let it rest on your fingers. In fact, you'll see that with it just resting, you still have the same motion, the same control, the same everything, but you're not likely to throw the shot off because your muscles are fatigued or anything like that. One thing that was surprising to me when I got really into pool is how much of an endurance sport this can be. Doesn't seem like it, but let me tell you something. You're in a 6-day tournament, you're on day 4, and you're hating life. You've been on your feet the whole time, you've been bending and standing all the time, kneeling, crouching, you've been braking so your triceps are tired. Let me tell you, this sport, the more fit you are, the better you're going to be at it. And I'm not talking about your typical muscle fitness. I'm just talking about overall general core fitness. You don't have to have a 6-pack to do this. As you can see, I've got like a keg. But it is a demanding sport. You'll see even just practicing, I'm already breaking a sweat. I've hardly done anything. It's a little warm in here, that's contributing to it. But you'll find that it is a workout, and you will be sore the next day because it's muscles you don't normally use. Okay, so straight down. Now, Ray Martin's book has you sitting about here. Now, players get all the way down low. Now, I don't like this personally. It's never been comfortable to me. I still tend to be up a little bit. I'm halfway in between what Ray teaches and what they do. The bottom line on it is it's going to be awkward. If you're doing the stance right, it's going to be awkward the first couple of times, but it'll become natural. And once it's natural, you won't even think about it. All right, so let's talk about practice. Pool is about consistency. You will find that everything you do in practice is designed to make you more consistent at something. And overall, you're building muscle memory so that your muscles know how to consistently do the same things. Which is why you'll find there's a lot of repetition. I've already done my initial warm-up. I'm going to go ahead and show you what I do. It's really pretty straightforward. Excuse me. It's really straightforward, but it seems kind of stupid until you know what it's about. Basically, what you do is you put your cue ball on the head spot. You're going to aim for the center diamond on the end rail, on the foot rail, and you're going to hit the ball. And the cue ball should come back and hit the tip of your cue. And you should be able to do this consistently, like every time. Straight down, straight back, hits the tip of the cue. Okay? It's a very simple drill. The way that I do it about 8 or 10 times with my eyes open, and then I do it 8 or 10 times with my eyes closed. And the reason I do it with my eyes closed is because if I'm lining my stance up wrong, doing it with my eyes closed will show me that I'm lined up that I'm lining up wrong. Okay, so every practice I start with that drill to make sure that if there's a problem with my stroke, I have fixed it before I move forward. All right, so today we're going to get into the actual practice, and we're going to be breaking. That is what happened is yesterday I played and my break was horrible, and that's just a matter of me not practicing, me not playing. So let's talk about the mechanics of a break. What makes a good break, the types of breaks that are currently in use, and we'll talk about some specific, we're talking specifically about 9-ball breaks, which also apply to 10-ball, and can apply to 8-ball, although there's typically a different strategy in 8-ball. So we'll start out by talking about the breaks. I'm going to talk about the types of breaks. Then I'm going to talk about the specific break that I use, and I'm going to talk about what constitutes a good break. So again, we're talking generally about 9-ball, and the rules in both 9-ball and 8-ball is on the break, you need to drive 4 balls to a rail, or you have to pocket a ball. So if you make a ball, the four balls to the rail rule doesn't count. So anyhow, the types that's the basic rule on the break. The break happens from behind the head string, the rack up here. For 9-ball, it's a little different. 9-ball, the 1 ball has to be on top, and then the rest go in random order. There is no ordering of the balls. So you don't like set them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, not 1, 2, 3, 4, 9, 5, 6, 7, 8. You just throw them in there, and however they lay out, how they go. I have seen cases where some specific tournaments have had rules that they had to be in a certain order, but in general, 1 ball on top, the rest of them in random order, 9 ball in the middle. Or if you're playing 10 ball, the 10 ball goes in the middle. 9 ball, it's a diamond shape. So I use my nice triangular markings to get this nice and tight. Now let's talk about the rack real quick. The current vogue in pool is that people rack their own. I'm actually not a fan of that. There are about 15 different ways I can set that rack up to make sure that I make a ball. I think that personally, I would prefer to see opponent racks, the other person racks, and the person who's breaking has to go down and read the rack. That would require way more skill than what's out there today. They'd have to look at the rack and figure out, okay, this ball's going to go that way, that one's going to go that way, okay, the 4 ball's going to go in if I break from over here. So I'd much rather see opponent racks and the person breaking is responsible for reading the rack. The way it was done prior to the current trend is that it was opponent racks, and you'd see the pros come down here and they do this stuff. And what they're looking at, for those that aren't aware of it, what they're looking at is they're looking to see if the 1 ball is frozen to the next balls in line. As long as those are frozen, you'll get a good break, or a decent break. If they're not frozen, it's almost impossible to get a good break. So that's what they're looking at. Types of breaks. So right now, there's this current trend to the soft break. In the soft break, the idea behind it is you start with the cue ball over about the first diamond up on the head string, and you're going to hit across the 1 in such a way that it rolls up into the side pocket. And you shoot it at a medium speed with bottom inside English. The cue ball will hit the rail and come back out and sit hopefully in the center of the table with a good shot on your next one. And they don't move all over the place, they all stay down here because you hit it soft. It's a pretty predictable break, but if you know your opponent's going to break soft and you're the one racking, you can place the 2 ball advantageously so that they will not have a shot on it. I'm not a fan of that break for a couple of reasons. One of the reasons is just I've always had a good hard break, so I don't like the soft break. I don't practice the soft break. I can try it. I probably won't make it, and it would just be a waste of time while I re-rack the balls. So I'm not going to actually perform the soft break. Let me just say I'm not a fan. The second reason I don't like it is because pool has suffered from not being a mainstream sport. It's always had a kind of seedy image. It's never really been able to overcome that, smoky room with people gambling image. And it's actually self-perpetuating. People gamble on pool because you can't make money on the tournaments. The year that I left, that I stopped playing was 2001. The previous year, 2000, Earl Strickland won the Mosconi Cup, the World Championship, the Mosconi Cup, the US Open, and one other major tournament, and his total income was $105,000, not counting sponsors and endorsements. That's for one of the best in the world at the sport. It's a sport that's just never hit the mainstream, and one of the things is because people don't understand the actual level of skill that it takes. The second reason is because pool is not a flashy sport. if you ever watch a broadcast of pool on ESPN, or you go get tapes or whatever, and you watch a game, it is some of the driest, most mind-numbing commentary and sport that you could possibly watch. I can draw a lot of parallels between it and baseball. I hate baseball. I can't sit and watch baseball. I love to play baseball, can't sit and watch it. It's like watching the grass grow. People in the outfield chasing butterflies. And I realize it's a very high level sport, and more power to the people that play it. But as a spectator sport, it just doesn't have enough action for me. You know, ooh, he hit a pop fly to left field. Ooh, he hit a pop fly to right. Grounder to the shortstop. He's thrown out at first. Okay, next side. Just old. And pool, the way that it's presented, falls into that same expectation. The only thing that was a saving grace to pool was the big breaks. It was the guy who came up and slammed him, and the cue ball hopped in the air and came down on the table, and 4 out of the 9 balls fell in the pocket. That was the exciting part of pool. Every now and then you have this great shot where the guy draws the length of the table with spin, or maybe masses around a ball, and we'll talk about masses later. It's basically where you curve a ball around another ball. Or the cue ball hits the rail, comes out, hits the rail again, and several times down to the other corner. Those are the shots that really made pool for me. And actually, when I was young, I used to practice those shots. Those were the ones that kept the spectators coming. If you go to a pool tournament today, if you go to a pro tournament, I'm talking about a big one like the U.S. Open. Of course, the last U.S. Open I was at was in 2001, and it's a great sport. The Behrmans put on a great event. You won't see the big corporate sponsors there. You won't see the the only vendors you'll see there will be people selling pool stuff. And the stands are about half empty. The only people that are up there are people who are just interested in the game for the game's sake, or people who are gambling, and there's a lot of that. And they've got some stuff worked out to make it legal to place pari-mutuel wagers and things like that. But the short version of it is, pool as a spectator sport is without some changes, it's not going to become mainstream. And there will not be money in it, which is why I say that the gambling is self-perpetuating. If you can't make a living playing tournaments, but you've got this phenomenal amount of skill, what do you do with it? You go gamble with it, and you make your money that way. People will go to a tournament where the first prize is $1,000, and within a couple of days after that, they've made 20 or 30,000 gambling. Until the tournaments pay enough to support the players without having to gamble, it's just not going to change. And so getting back to the soft break, I think that the soft break is detrimental to the game because it takes one of the most exciting parts of the game out of the game. So I'm a big fan of the hard breaks, or the fast breaks. So in tournament play, there are 2 hard breaks that are used. The preferred one is from outside on the corner, and you can see where on my table I've got marks from having done this so many times. And the idea is to break. The closer to the side you are, the higher the odds of making a ball. So you'll see them all the way out here where they're starting to get counterproductive because the rail's getting in the way of the shot. I typically go 1 ball distance out. The other place they break from, and this is only in certain tournaments, there's something called the breaking box. And it goes from the center between the 2 diamonds on the head string, down half, across, and up. And this box is the only place you're allowed to brake. Now sometimes it's a curve, sometimes it's a circle, but it's effectively the same thing. You get to brake from here to here on the head string because everybody brakes from the head string, except a couple of players. The idea with all of the fast brakes though is exactly the same. When you strike the ball, you want to hit it slightly above center and hitting slightly down on it because you want the ball actually to leave the felt. I'm going to exaggerate this. You want it to come up off the felt so that you're not getting friction the whole way down, and you want it to come back and land on the felt right as it makes contact with the one ball. If you do that, you get the maximum possible force out of your stroke to transfer to the rack. If you hit it in the right place, the cue ball, if you hit it exactly right, the cue ball will jump up about 6 inches, it'll come back, and it'll stop in the center of the table, which gives you the best odds of having a follow-on shot. That's the perfect break. If the cue ball bounces in front of the rack, it will bounce and it will hit above center on the one, and it will come straight up and straight down. There's nothing wrong with that, except that you end up down here somewhere in the middle of the mass rather than out in the center of the table. If you hit it too long in the air and it hits above center on its way up, it'll come down, it'll bounce out, and it'll spin and stop. So that's actually preferable to hitting first. The other downside to that is if you hit too far up, it'll skip off the table. And I'm sure you're going to see that a bunch today. So the idea is to get it to come just barely off the table. I was really grossly exaggerating. You just wanted enough off the table that it's not touching the felt on the way down there. And you can see here all the dots where I'm landing before I hit the rack. That's a mechanic that I've never bothered to fix. My brake works well. And I've also actually found that, and I was told to stop braking in one pool hall because when I was braking and hitting it perfect, the cue ball would come up straight and hit the light. And most pool halls, the lights are about here. After I broke 2 or 3 of his lights in one day, he asked me to stop braking or to brake less powerfully. The brake, something to understand about it, a lot of people will go out and get the heaviest cue they can find to brake with, thinking that the mass is what's going to create the powerful big brake. This cue is a 17.5. It's about as light as a playing cue gets. You can get 16.5 to 17, but 17.5 is really light for a playing cue. The reason I do that is, remember that your power is the mass plus the velocity, and you get a lot more, quote, bang for the buck from velocity than you do from mass. So being able to move the pool cue faster because you have a finite amount of muscle, being able to move the, well, and mass, if you get your body mass into it, which you should, and we'll talk about braking, the actual technique of braking in a different one. Today it's about practice. I just wanted to give you the basics before I get into practicing. But the idea is to get as much speed out of the cue on the way to the cue ball to drive the cue ball as quickly as possible, because no matter what the mass of that is, it doesn't matter, because this isn't what's hitting the balls. This is, and this mass doesn't change. The only thing you can change in that equation, you can't change the mass, and it's mass times speed. So you can change speed. You can't change the mass. There it is. The faster you can make that ball move, the harder your brake's going to be. And so that's why we try to take that friction out of it, is because friction slows things down. We don't want to slow down. So to maintain the speed, we get it off of the carpet, make it hit the balls with as little friction slowdown as possible, or as friction drag. So that's the brake. Like I said, Two places that people commonly break from with hard brakes is either from the outside as far as you can get because you have a higher incidence of making a ball. Incidentally, harder to control from the outside, but you have a higher incidence of making balls. So if you practice the brake, this is probably the highest percentage brake if you get it right. Braking inside the box, you brake exactly the same way. The difference is you don't get the bridge on the rail, which means you have to elevate your bridge a little bit there to get that downward angle to get the cue ball to hop on its way. And other than that, it's just pure power and speed and finesse and technique. When you're practicing the brake, you're going to hit it, and you're going to find an aiming point in here. So I might start out aiming at the 2 ball, okay? And see where my cue goes. If my cue goes straight back, then great, that's my point of aim. If it goes off to that side, well, then I'm hitting too far to that side. I need to come more to the left. If the cue ball is going this way, then I'm coming too far that way. I need to go more to the right. So that's how you figure it out. You find your point of aim, you lock in on what works, and then you repeat it over and over and over. And so now I'm going to start braking and get my practice in.